Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So, I just watched Young Royals season 2. Let's talk about it. So before there was Heartstopper, there was Young Royals, okay? And Young Royal is basically like a cross between Heartstopper and The Crown, okay? Now, the first season introduced us to young Prince Wilhelm, who is made to go to a traditional elite boarding school after his royal family finds out about his bad boy partying ways. And it's when he goes to this school that he ends up meeting Simon, who is one of the few students there who is there on a scholarship because he's actually from a regular old working class family. Now, these two worlds collide and we end up with this whirlwind gay teen romance. They end up falling in love only for their love story to come to a tragic end when someone ends up filming them having sex and the video gets leaked online for the world to see, dumping a ton of shame and controversy and scandal on the royal family's doorstep, which of course cannot stand, which is why Wilhelm ends up being forced to deny that it was him in the video, leaving Simon to deal with the fallout of the video all on his own, and of course putting a strain on their relationship. And the plot thickens still, okay, because at the end of season 1 we see Wilhelm's elder brother Eric, who is the crown prince at the time, end up dying due to a car accident, which puts Wilhelm in the position of crown prince instead, thereby increasing the stakes of protecting his reputation. So that scandalous video, yeah, that's not gonna help the situation. Now, as I'm explaining the plot of season 1 to you guys, you could probably sense my enthusiasm. You could probably sense my joy, my happiness, because guess what? This is one of the very best and most underrated series that Netflix has ever given birth to. Truly, Young Royals is it. Young Royals is so my jam. I believe I mentioned it last year in a maybe what I've been watching, or in some capacity I mentioned this show last year, but it is so excellent. And I was so happy to see that we were getting a season 2. Okay, I cancelled all my plans and I binged this thing all in one sitting, and I'm here to tell you my thoughts on the second season of Young Royals. But before we get into all of that good stuff, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. And be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel out and it'll let me know what kind of videos you like to see. Okay, now without further ado guys, let's get into my thoughts on season 2 of Young Royals. So when we're reintroduced to our favourite Swedish teens, unfortunately Simon and Will are on the rocks. We're still dealing with the fallout of season 1 with the scandalous sex tape coming out, but of course because people aren't sure of the identity of the second party in the video, it's only Simon that's left to deal with the consequences of this huge scandal because Will has denied that it is him. And that led to Simon breaking up with Will because he was left in the dust to deal with the scandal alone. And not only that, but he was also sick and tired of being Will's dirty little secret. You know, he wanted to be with someone who would be open about loving him and caring about him, and that's just not something that Will could do, especially in the position as crown prince. So for the first few episodes of the new season, we just see Will and Simon trying to navigate student life like around each other, but it's just not working because they have that undeniable like electric chemistry with one another, and it's just that emotion and that love is undeniable. They cannot refute it no matter how hard they try, and it's this tension, it's this chemistry that leaves us as audience members just like frothing at the mouth. Like guys, Simon and Will's chemistry is off the freaking charts. I remember that first episode when they meet again, like after the long break that they had, and they're just standing on opposite sides of a room with Simon trying to find his sister Sara, who's gone through this initiation process and she set fire to the flag and everything. She's up to all sorts. We'll talk about her later. But Simon's there looking for Sara, and it's only Will who Sara will respond to. They're standing on opposite sides of the room, and yet it seems like no one else is there. And I know that it's all because of the, you know, cinematography and the playlist and all that, but in my mind I'm like, this is the power of Simon and Will, period. Absolutely. Like, these two are just a match made in heaven. It's crazy. And of course, I give all the due and respect and admiration to the actors here, because they just delivered every single time, every single scene, every single episode. Yeah. Absolutely. But here's the thing, as much as I am frothing at the mouth whenever I see Simon and Will on screen together, unfortunately for the first few episodes of this new season, that screen time is spent with them running around in circles, having the same old argument, which is, you know, dealing with the fallout of season 1, with the tape situation, you know, the fact that Simon can't really trust Will because of that huge betrayal after season 1. Of course, is a very valid reason for Simon not to want to jump into a relationship with Will again, even though the feelings that he has for him are clearly undeniable and very much still there. But it does make for a very frustrating watch for us audience members who just want to see them get back together again, because ultimately, of course, they're going to be endgame. Of course, they're going. If there's any sense in the universe, if there's any justice in this world, of course, they're going to be endgame. So, like, what are we waiting for? Just get over it, okay? Just get over it, fix it up, and then just get back together again, because that's when we're happiest. And then the second season had this added storyline of this love triangle between Simon, Will, and this new character called Marcus, who shows his interest in Simon, you know, almost immediately, and he seems to be the alternate kind of boyfriend that Simon wants and deserves, someone who can be open about being in a relationship with him and is open about showing affection to him. Like I said, that's absolutely what Simon deserves, and there's definitely less toxicity to his relationship with Marcus. But at the end of the day, there's no flavour. At the end of the day, there's no passion. The chemistry isn't there. So the whole time I'm like, yes, you know, it would be so great if Marcus and Simon dated. Marcus would, you know, show him the shooting range, and they would go on dates together out in the open, because Simon shouldn't be anyone's secret, okay? But the passion isn't there. The chemistry, the fire, the flames, the electricity, it's just not there. So, like, what can you do? What can you do? At the end of the day, there's this massive Will-sized hurdle standing in between Simon and Marcus's relationship. And Simon just doesn't get over it. And he can't, because at the end of the day, Will is the love of his life, you know, according to the writers and the on-screen chemistry. Sorry, don't make the rules. But from the audience's perspective, you know, this love triangle grows increasingly frustrating once again, because we know that Marcus cannot possibly be endgame. He does not pose as a viable alternative to Will, because the chemistry and the love story is not there. So for the majority of the season, he's just standing there as this hurdle between Will and Simon, and instead of us being invested in Simon's relationship with both Will and Marcus, instead we're just waiting with bated breath until Marcus gets the fudge out of the way so that Will and Simon can get back together again. On the bright side, at least Simon has another storyline that doesn't center around his relationship with Will, because unfortunately the same can't be said for Will himself, who spends 90% of the show's runtime mooning over Simon, as he should, absolutely. But the writers could have written in some extra storylines for Will to be focused on when he wasn't obsessing over Simon. Now, Will does have this minor storyline surrounding this upcoming speech that he's supposed to make for the school's 120th anniversary, and this is a big deal. You know, his brother would have made the speech had he been alive, and his parents are both going to be in attendance, including his mother, the Queen, and it's going to be, you know, televised for all of Sweden to see. So, like, this is a big deal events that he's supposed to be preparing for, but of course he's not preparing because he's mooning over Simon. He's barely been paying attention to that piece of paper that he's supposed to have memorized by now. But it definitely doesn't help that Will is suffering from a huge amount of anxiety, you know, surrounding his relationship with Simon, but also his feelings about becoming crown prince and dealing with the responsibilities of that, as well as, of course, dealing with, you know, the loss of his older brother, who he been looked up to and respected and expected to have to deal with the responsibilities of being crown prince. He's definitely not coping very well with the fact that the duties that his older brother was supposed to perform as crown prince have now fallen on his lap all of a sudden. So that would have been some really compelling material to help Will stand out as a well-rounded and dynamic character separate from his relationship with Simon. But unfortunately, the writers didn't place enough emphasis on these storylines for them to have an actual impact. They seem like an afterthought to his relationship with Simon, which takes up, again, 90% of Will's existence on season 2. And as a result, the other storylines are definitely done a disservice, but Will himself as a character is far more one-dimensional this season than he was previously. I mean, even the whole bad boy angle that landed him in this elite boarding school to begin with has been dropped in season 2. It would have made sense if he had gone back to his bad boy partying ways in retaliation for all of the stress and the anxiety that he has to go through as a result of everything that's happened in his life. And on top of that, I also would have liked if we had gotten to see Wilhelm actually fulfill some of the duties of a crown prince, to really show the step up in responsibility that he's supposed to fulfill in this new position that his brother previously occupied. Like, if we had gotten just one scene with him outside of the school meeting some actual Swedish people, okay, shaking hands, cutting ribbons, making speeches as he said, then maybe it would have helped contextualize this increase in responsibility that he's struggling to deal with. Whereas, you know, in the case of this season, we only get to see him preparing for this one speech, which, yeah, it's, you know, made to be a very big deal with the cameras and the Queen and everything. But I think it would have been better if we had just gotten, you know, one little scene outside of the school showing his role and how it would impact the citizens of Sweden. I'm guessing they didn't do that because it would have been pricey. You know, it's one thing to kind of film around the same grounds of the school, but it's another thing to get, you know, extras and block off a street to set up this whole fake royal event. But it really would have done a great service to the show and to the character to help see what his role actually looks like outside of the confines of the school. I also think another thing that we really needed, and this is something that would have been more easily accomplished without having to deal with a whole new set, but we really needed Will to have a proper conversation with his parents. A conversation that did not end in him shouting at them and slamming the door shut, okay? We needed one more conversation between Will and his rents where they discussed, you know, the loss of his elder brother Eric and his new responsibilities and the pressures that come with that. You know, the fact that Will sees a therapist throughout this season is amazing. He manages to open up to that therapist and actually talk to him about the anxiety that he's suffering from. But I would have loved to see a follow-up scene, you know, after he has a fight with his parents, another scene where he talks to them about that anxiety and about how he's trying to deal with it. And then maybe another moment between him and his mother where she could have seen where he was coming from and empathized with him. Just a little hug. We see that hug between them, okay? Just to show that she understands him and is there for him despite the fact that she is the Queen of Sweden. And that is something that he asks from her in the show. He asks, like, can't you just put the Queen kind of crown away and just put your mum hat on for a second? And if we had just gotten a scene like that where she met him at that level, you know, as his mother rather than as the Queen of Sweden, I think that would have again added to that character's emotional arc. But having said all of that, honestly, I am not too angry with how the show dealt with Will and Simon's other storylines, because at the end of the day, what I am here to see is the love story between Will and Simon, period, okay? At the end of the day, that is the draw of the show. So they completely understood the assignment on that front, okay? Seeing the characters reunite after they worked out their differences was absolute elation. Like, it was just perfection. Oh, I love to see it. And then when they have that make-out session in Will's room that turns into slightly more, perhaps a potential second sex tape sequel situation, I did enjoy the fact that, you know, Will made a point to close the curtain. we gotta close those curtains, okay? But not only that, the scene itself is kind of cut short and it fades to black earlier than it did in season 1, for instance. And I feel like that was the show's kind of symbolic way of saying that us as audience members were intruding on this very private moment between the characters. Like, it was a very meta way of giving the characters the privacy that they've been craving this whole season after the events of season 1, from not only the characters within the show but also us as the audience. So now let's move on to other characters on this series, because they are there. Okay, it's not just Simon and Will. But first one up we have is Sara. Sara, what can I say about Simon's sister Sara? Sara let me down, honestly. Sara disappointed me. I'll start with the good. I like the fact that we have this character in existence on the show. The fact that she seems to be a neurodivergent character who, at the very least, it doesn't quite get all social cues. You know, she's still learning when it comes to socializing and, you know, that aspect of life. So I like the fact that she's very open about asking questions and very upfront about her thoughts. And I also especially like the fact that she wasn't like bullied for it. That would have been so typical and stereotypical even to have her be bullied for the way that she is, and I'm glad that the show didn't go in that direction, but instead she interacts with people who are understanding and very upfront and honest with her for the most part, right? Aside from the secrets that are held between friends on the show. But overall, I like the fact that Sara was able to learn both, you know, academically and socially in a very accepting and approachable environment. Having said that though, having said that, this season we saw Sis fall on August's lap and she lost her damn mind. Oh, she lost her damn mind for August. She betrayed her own flesh and blood. She betrayed her brother for August. I can't relate, honestly. I know that this was her first love, okay, and the first guy that she slept with, but this was just like abysmal to me. So shameful when you consider how much pain and agony Simon has been through over that sex tape, and you're sleeping with the literal enemy, the cinematographer of the tape itself. That is just shame on you, Sara. And the thing is that not only was she betraying her brother, that's already bad enough, right? But she was also betraying her new bestie Felice, because she knew that Felice was friends with Will, so she was on the wrong side on both cases. Like, it's just so sad. It's so sad to see. But unfortunately, Sara decided to choose, you know, August for the majority of this season, and she ended up facing the consequences at the end there. Although I will say I was really sad to see her leave the school. I don't think this was something to leave the school over, and hopefully if we do get a third season we'll see her return, because she was really starting to make a home for herself at that school with these new friends, and she was really thriving. The only thing that set her back, unsurprisingly, was being associated with August. Although I will say, when it comes to Sara's storyline this season, whilst it was fun seeing her betray everyone that she knows and loves, whilst that was great drama, it made for a great storyline, I did think it was a shame that we lost some of the kind of socio-economic commentary that we got in the first season of the show. The first season made a point to highlight the fact that Sara and Simon were from working class backgrounds. You know, their father was a deadbeat and their mother was the only one sustaining them economically. And so they were from a disadvantaged background, and the show made a point to contrast, you know, their socioeconomic status to that of the elites attending this traditional boarding school. And I feel like a lot of that commentary was lost this season when we saw Sara kind of come into the fold of this boarding school, being a full-time boarder student, as opposed to going there part-time as she was previous. Was she going there part-time previously? Maybe not, I can't remember, but either way she's there full time now, and so the impact of that commentary is lost. We do still see elements of this commentary be explored through Sara's storyline this season. Like, we see that she can't afford to contribute towards super expensive gifts for her, you know, new rich posh friends, and in fact she can't really afford to buy anything from the cafeteria to eat while she's at school. So we do see that being touched upon here and there, but it's nowhere near as prevalent as it was last season, where it was actually like a major storyline for Simon and Sara. Okay, so the next character up we have, you guessed it, it's August. Ugh. August sucks, and I think the reason why I'm so angry with August in particular is because he tricked me. He almost had me there, okay? He tricked me, because for a second there I was on his side. For a second there I was like, ooh, maybe I feel kind of bad for... Nope. No, he's a liar, he's a traitor, he's a Judas. He sucks so much. Now I will say overall this season August had a thinner storyline. The writing was a little bit more scarce for the character in comparison to season 1. For instance, we don't really touch upon the financial troubles that his family is facing in this season. We see that he makes a very expensive purchase of a horse in order to please Sara, but there's not a lot mentioned about his financial status anymore. It doesn't really play a role in the character's journey this season. But much like with the other characters, we do get the exploration of the fallout from what happened in season 1, and August of course is a key player because, like I said, he was the cinematographer of the famous sex tape that was leaked. And we already know from season 1 that Will is fully aware that August is to blame for his downfall, so of course Will takes it upon himself to get the worst revenge that he possibly can. Okay, he tries to get revenge on August by taking away everything that August loves. He gets August removed as a prefect for the boys' house in the school. He gets August removed as the captain of their rowing team, their all-important rowing team. And this is all that August is as a person. This is everything that he holds dear to his heart that Will is snatching away from him as revenge for what he did last season. And he is like begging and pleading on his knees, asking Will for forgiveness, but Will is just so pissed off, as he should be, for what August did, that he doesn't even listen to him. And I was actually feeling bad for the guy. Like I said, like seeing him plead with Will, like, please, I'm sorry for what I did. Until, of course, it came to facing real life consequences for his actions, because then August turned his ugly head and became the manipulating, conniving, scheming demon that we know him to be. All of that innocent, like, oh please help, that all disappeared once he was actually faced with real life consequences of the crime that he committed against Simon and Will. Now, I do think that it's very interesting that Will's first instinct to get revenge on August surrounded just like basically petty things, you know, like taking the stuff that he loves away from him, whereas Simon's first instinct was to get that guy in prison, get that guy behind bars. I think that is kind of touching on that socioeconomic discrepancy between the characters, the different worlds that they live in, where Simon thinks that, you know, if you've done something as atrocious and awful and against the law as what August has done, he deserves to go to prison. He deserves to face actual, you know, legal consequences for that. Whereas, you know, because Will is from the same kind of world as August is from, he's kind of going for more of these like lower stakes, status-based kind of consequences or punishments for August. And I think it speaks to what is explored in the show, which is the idea that, you know, people from the upper class, you know, the upper echelons of society seldom face the consequences and punishments of their criminal actions that they deserve. And all of this is made even worse by the extra plot twist thrown in here, where August is actually named by the royal court as the backup crown prince. I was shocked and bamboozled. I didn't understand what the hell was going on. Okay, I was like, can they even do this? He's not even related to Will, but whatever. In terms of the context of the show, it made for a great plot twist because Will is clearly struggling with his roles and duties as crown prince. So the royal court decides that instead of hedging their bets, they're going to go for a backup plan in the form of August, who is more than happy to hear this news, especially considering how downtrodden he has been this season because of Will taking revenge on him, rightfully so. But in the end, it results in August seemingly being rewarded for destroying Will's life, literally trying to ruin this guy. And obviously Will's mother isn't happy about this, but she's the queen and she has to do what's best for the monarchy at large, not just for her own son. So this goes ahead for some reason, to the point where August is even given a copy of the speech that Will is supposed to make for the 120th anniversary of the school, and he's learning this speech. He is dedicated to this role. But I was so happy that in the end, Will managed to get the job done. Oh, I was so happy. They left us waiting. They left us hanging until the very end there, okay? He got in by the skin of his teeth. But I'm so happy that not only did he give the speech, you know, as intended, but he also put his extra spin on it by revealing the truth about the nature of the sex tape and telling everyone, you know, telling everyone in the school, everyone watching at home in Sweden, that he was in fact the second party on the tape. And it was all the more satisfying getting to see August standing there all gobsmacked, shooketh and bamboozled. It's what he deserves. Yep, absolutely. And speaking of Will's speech, like I said, I was really happy to see that he finally revealed that it was him in the video, and hopefully him and Simon could go back to that happy bliss that they had before, you know, just happy in love with one another, especially if we're going to get a third season of the show. I think that would be a really great way to round out the series, to have like a whole season of them being happy and, you know, facing obstacles, but like not too many obstacles. And by the way, I do feel like Netflix is obliged, okay, obliged to make a third season for the show at the very least. This is not a request, okay, this is not me asking, this is me demanding. This is something that they have to do in order to wrap up these great storylines for these amazing characters. And finally, before we finish this review, I did just have a couple of short notes here and there. First of all, I love the fact that this series features some, you know, young talent that looks authentically teenaged. Okay, this series doesn't have actors who have been Hollywoodized. It feels so much more grounded and authentic, and I think I've mentioned this, you know, previously in other reviews, but I really do appreciate this approach to the depiction of teen dramas, because it just feels more realistic to me. You know, long gone are the days where we expect to see teens being portrayed by adults who are literally like in their 30s. Like what is that? I mean, Euphoria hasn't gotten the message yet, but what is that? Okay, this is definitely the product of a bygone era. We've moved on, and now we have shows like Young Royals and Heartstopper and Sex Education, where the characters look and feel like actual teenagers. And secondly, speaking of a possible third season for the show, I would like to see them expand upon the female characters within Sara's friendship group, or at least previous friendship group. There was this one girl who apparently had a crush on her best friend, and she wrote her a love letter for Saint Valentine's Day, which was basically Valentine's. Come on now, it was so funny. Side note, it was so funny when the students were like, oh, like we don't do Valentine's Day like the Americans, like that's all superficial and just tacky and blah blah blah. And then their Saint Valentine's Day celebrations, it was basically like an American Valentine's Day celebration. Like it was basically like an American Valentine's Day dance, okay, if we're being real. So yeah, just with like the added twist of them dressing up like Georgian era aristocrats. Like, but anyways, it was nice to see that girl kind of write that little love note for her friend, and hopefully we'll see the kind of second part of that storyline in the third season, which, like I said, I'm demanding from Netflix. This is not a request. And just in general, I do feel like the second season felt a bit more like a filler season. Not a bad one, a very good one that had me engaged from start to finish, but still a filler season nonetheless. And we definitely need to see the second parts of these storylines come together in a third season at the very least. Thirdly, I also really enjoyed the friendship between Felice and Will, even though they did have that bit of a hiccup where they started making out, and I was like, what's going on? I was like, what's going on? Oh, did I turn on another show? But they quickly resolved that issue, which I liked. I liked the fact that they didn't draw it out for like the whole season, and they went back to being friends, you know, and I really enjoy that friendship a lot. Although I will say it is mostly comprised of Will mooning over Simon. And I wish they would do more with the character of Felice, because she is a really great character with great potential. So yeah, maybe if in the next season they could give her own juicy storyline to work with, that would be great, because otherwise she's just a sounding board for Will to kind of project all of his issues with Simon on. And finally, the last thing that I wanted to mention that I really love about this series is the soundtrack. Oh, in particular, guys, this series features some music from my favorite artist of all time. I don't usually talk about music here on this channel, but listen to me now. Listen to me now when I say that there are a couple of songs here from this Swedish artist called Scott, who I would highly recommend you guys check out. It brought such a smile to my face to hear her music be featured on the show, because I'm such a huge fan of hers and I have been for several years now. And so yeah, I was fangirling. Like, I don't really fangirl over a lot of musical artists, but I was totally fangirling when I heard her songs pop up. So I would highly recommend you check out her music and all of the music featured on the show, because for the most part it is banging. It's really hard to do like a jukebox show where they have a ton of, you know, music being featured every scene, but I feel like the series struck the right balance of not having an overwhelming amount of, you know, snippets from songs be featured here, and actually letting the dialogue speak for itself. And speaking of the dialogue, real quick, watch the show in Swedish. Don't put the English dubs on. Don't do that. I watched it in Swedish with English subtitles, and honestly that's the only way to go in my opinion. So watch the show in the language that it was intended to be seen in, okay? So with all of that being said, guys, I'm going to be giving Young Royal season 2 an 8 out of 10. So that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Young Royals, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this series down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.